Hello everyone, Nathaniel Gavronsky here, and I am in St. Paul, Minnesota. And I'm talking about the great state of Minnesota, the capital city of St. Paul, the county seat of Ramsey County, and the Capitol building behind me. I'm going to do a quick rundown because it's cold, and I want to get this capital in the winter because it's Minnesota. Alright, so Ramsey County gets its name from Alexander Ramsey. He was a politician that was born on September 8th, 1815 in Hummelstown, Pennsylvania, where he was a congressman for several years before being appointed to the territorial governor of Minnesota. Where he served from 1849 until the mid-1850s, when he became mayor of St. Paul, Minnesota, before being elected as the second governor of Minnesota. One of the famous things about him as a governor of Minnesota is that he happened to be in Washington when Fort Sumter was attacked, and he was the first Union state to offer troops to Lincoln's cause. He then returned to Minnesota and got his troops ready and sent them to go fight for the Union. During his time of governor, the state legislature here decided they were going to make him the U.S. Senator for Minnesota. This was when state legislatures, not an everyday person voting, determined who the U.S. Senator was. So they decided to make their governor one of their two U.S. senators. After being a U.S. Senator, he actually would become the U.S. Secretary of War. After that, he would actually be sent out to Utah as a counselor and would later be named as a defendant in a Supreme Court case over voting rights for polygamists. The Supreme Court found in his favor, determining that polygamists under the U.S. Constitution did not, in fact, have a right to vote. After politics and public service, he retired back to Minnesota, where he peacefully died in his home on April 22nd, 1903. The city of St. Paul has a really interesting history. It all starts in 1819 with a fort that was originally known as St. Anthony's, but was renamed Fort Snelling. This fort was a place for white fur trappers to settle in the area and work with the Indians that were already in the area and to develop their fur trades. Now, during this time period, the whiskey trade really got into full swing, and the commanders of the fort didn't like all the drunkenness, so they outlawed distilling on all grounds controlled by the fort, which made many of the prominent distillers in the area flee southward. One of the most prominent ones was a gentleman by the name of Pierre Pig's Eye Perron. Yeah, Perron was his last name. And he would move from Fort Snelling area down the river to what is now St. Paul. He would call his little abode Pig's Eye. And later on, a French-born Roman Catholic by the name of Father Lucian Geltier moved down from Canada, from the former Red River colony, what is now basically Winnipeg and Manitoba, with the Métis, the French Canadians that were leaving what had become known as British North America into what remained of New France, which was basically this Louisiana, as Canada had folded into British North America before being reconstituted as Canada later on. Here he opened up a little wooden cabin-style church that he named after Paul, one of the apostles. This church became known as St. Paul's Chapel, and from this chapel and Pig's Eye grew out St. Paul, Minnesota. St. Paul, Minnesota was incorporated in the year 1854, which was after the state legislature had already started meeting here. But the territorial legislature decided that St. Paul would be a great starting place for the capital because it was the most populated area in all of the territory. Now, they did share the wealth. The territorial government had some things to share. One was the state capital, or the territorial capital at the time, the state or territorial university, which went to Minneapolis, and Stillwater got the prison system. Now, all of those three was how they basically decided to share the wealth of state government. Now, the territorial capital was in March 3rd, 1849 is when it got its start. There were 9 councilors and there were 18 House of Representatives for the territory of Minnesota. and of course Alexander Ramsey was the territorial governor. During the second session, they decided they needed to select a permanent Capitol building, which they built on Exchange Street on the corner of Cedar and Wabasha, between 10th and 11th. This Capitol building was completed in 1853 and opened its doors to the public in 1854, just as the 5th territorial legislature took their seats. This building served Minnesota well until an untimely fire in 1881 during session burned the building to the ground. Now, the governor and the legislators were able to save much of the furniture and many of the cultural and historical documents for the territory, but the building was a complete loss. They initially tried to salvage what they could of the building, but were unable to, and had to build a new building, which was completed in 1883, just a few years after the first Capitol burned down. And as you can probably imagine, this building wasn't all that good. Had plenty of problems and started to decay almost immediately after being built. In 1893, they decided they were going to have to create a new building because since the territory had become a state in 1858, on May 11th, the population had grown substantially, and so they decided to build their third and current building here on Wabasha Hill, and they broke ground on this site on May 6th, 1896. They laid the cornerstone on July 27th, a much warmer day than this, 1858. The building was completed in 1905. Now, at the time, the designer of the building, he was only 35 years of age, and his name was Cass Gilbert. Because of the grand design and the success of this building, he was dispatched all over the country to finish state capitals that were being built and refurbished and start from scratch for several other capitals throughout the South. He became a really well-known architect, and he all gets his start from St. Paul, Minnesota. Now, a couple of the noticeable things about this beautiful building behind me is that what they call the quadriga is what's known colloquially, but the official title is Progress of the State, and it's the four horses and the chariot gilded in gold on top of the building. Now, the chariot driver is the physical embodiment of Minnesota itself, while the four horses represent the powers of nature: earth, wind, water, and fire. Now, you can see there are 6 statues right below the gilded horses. These are the 6 virtues. Now, I see a lot of these across all the capitals, and so I'm going to do a separate video just about the virtues, because you see them throughout the country on Capitol buildings. So I'm going to do a video just about them, and I'm going to incorporate videos and pictures of all the capitals in that video. Now, the dome from floor to top is 223 feet tall, and around the dome are 12 carved eagles that protect not only the Capitol building, but the entire state of Minnesota. The rotunda is great for symbolism, and there's an 8-pointed star which represents Minnesota's state motto, which is Star of the North, and that is incorporated in the marble flooring in the rotunda. It's a very, very beautiful building. It is open Monday through Friday year-round, and then it closes around 5, and the tours start every hour on the hour and last about 45 minutes. I have lived and worked in Minnesota quite a bit. I have a lot of good friends that are in the Minnesota legislature, and they're all really good friends, and I always love coming up here and working with them on different issues. And I want to dedicate this video to 2 special people. Jim Hagedorn, he was the congressman for Minnesota 1. He recently just passed away, and I want to dedicate this video to him and his family and to all of his constituents in the southern part of Minnesota. I also want to dedicate this video to a really good friend of mine who I just lost to senseless violence in the streets of St. Paul. Her name is Yulia Lee. She was born in Kazakhstan, and I met her at the University of Iowa. She later transferred to the University of Minnesota and completed her studies here. She was working and living in St. Paul, Minnesota, a place that she loved and called home. We had a service for her today. That's what brings me up to the great state of Minnesota, and I want to dedicate this video to her memory because she was a dear friend of mine, and I'm going to miss her terribly. And I hope that we find justice for her. There's more senseless violence on the streets of the Twin Cities, and I really hope to see this stop. I'm really devastated about her loss, and Minnesota's, also mourning with the loss of their beloved Congressman Jim Hagedorn. So to everyone watching this video, I hope you enjoy it. I hope you subscribe and follow all my other state capitals and other historical landmarks across this great country. From St. Paul, Minnesota, from the Minnesota State Capitol, stay healthy, stay wealthy, stay wise, and as always, stay classy, Minnesota!